welcome. This is only about my 4th narrated video, so I'm still quite new at it, but I wanted to show you some things that are easier to look at on video than they are on just still photos. So here I am again. Today I'm looking at some different art books, sketchbooks, journals, some that I have made myself and some that I bought and then have gone through some things. So this one that is on right now is what my sketchbooks look like, or journals. I actually use them as journals because I prefer to write rather than draw most of the time. And so this one is new, and I have a leather cover for it that I enjoy using, so I just swap those out of the cover and keep the cover each time. And they last about 3 months, so I write a couple pages a day of just things that I want to remember, things that I want to think through. And I like that the pen fits neatly in them. I like that they're not too big. I started out with larger journals, and I've been enjoying having a little bit kind of more medium-sized ones. Those are the calendar pages that I showed a couple of posts ago, and those are my schedules for work. That's what my kind of planner looks like. And then when I'm done with them, I'm going to put that one back in there. When I'm done with them, I take them out and I add some covers to them. So I add some papers to make them look decent without that leather cover on top. And I've been turning them into scrapbooks. I've been doing this for about 10 years. It's been working out pretty well for me. I like scrapbooking, but I don't necessarily like having a 12 by 12 inch kind of large, nice looking scrapbook that uses all of the fancy pre-made supplies. Fancy pre-made supplies are fun, but it's hard to actually sustain that over time for me. So this is what my scrapbooks look like. Each scrapbook is for about 2 years because I cut out some of the pages inside in order to make room for the pictures so that the book doesn't end up all kind of fat and distorted. So I have on one side that calendar page that I showed before, and then on the other side, those are mostly my husband's photographs because he's much more of a photographer than I am, and then some art pieces that I've made. And you can see each month has some stuff going on in it. I like looking at these. My memory isn't very good, so I like looking back at them and saying, oh, we did do stuff. It's January right now, so I get a little bit of seasonal depression, and I like looking at my scrapbooks from the past. I haven't updated those. That's the end of the scrapbook, and then that's the rest of that sketchbook. It has a little bit of toddler scribbles in there too, and a couple of pictures. But I like looking back at them and going, oh yeah, we do things. We do go places and do things together. So these are 3 saddle-stitched booklets. I went to a workshop at the New Mexico Art Educators Conference last fall where we made this booklet. She talked a little bit about zines, showed us some different zines from some different artists, and then showed us how to make this little saddle-stitched book. And I had seen a little bit more basic saddle-stitched books before, or the ones where you do the staples in the middle. And those are okay, but I don't necessarily like them as objects. This one I liked a lot better because of the torn edges, because of the little window in the front, because of the flaps. I liked the thread a little better. That's waxed linen thread. And I just enjoy them more as objects. It doesn't take sometimes a whole lot of extra effort or extra supplies in order to make an object just a little bit different than the ones that you see everywhere, and a little bit more kind of fun to hold and work with. And you could see there that I did turn that one into a scrapbook too. These are 3 scrapbooks that I'm putting pictures for my kids in, and maybe I'll give them to them sometime, or maybe I'll just look at them to reminisce sometime when I maybe am older and think, oh, I remember those times. And so they have like a 2-page spread for each year of the kid's life in them, and that's a Coptic bound book. They have 4 little registers in them, and I sewed those together. In retrospect, maybe I should have used the wax linen thread. That's cotton embroidery thread, and it slips a little bit. I may or may not have to rebind them sometime. But they have watercolor paper that's covered in a nicer kind of art paper on them, and then inside them I'm gradually filling them up. There's that stitching on the inside. I like the Coptic bound style. I'm not teaching that one yet because the saddle stitch I think is enough for this year, but I might sometime because it's not too hard. It looks kind of interesting. I like being able to cover them. The other reason I'm not teaching them is because that art paper is a little bit more expensive. So I would need something to cover it with. Maybe we could do it with fabric sometime. I'll see what ends up happening. There's the stitching. You can see the stitching in the middle of each register. And you can see that on those initial journals and scrapbooks as well. This is a hardcover book that I bought for my job, and I have it here. It belongs to the school now, but I really like this artist. She's a watercolor artist. I've been using some of her techniques for teaching watercolors and showing what you can do with some of the different watercolor techniques. And I also I didn't realize when I bought it, but this is the only hardcover book that I have in my classroom, or really my house either. This is the only hardcover book I have right now, and it does have the stitching in there, which I prefer to the soft cover gluing into a block thing. It feels nice. I like looking at it. I like taking it with me, and when I go places and taking a look at the book, and I like the printing on it. I have some Kindle books that are art books, but they're hard to look at because I have to look at them on my computer, and it's not as good an experience. So I do enjoy that book. I'm going to show two books that I've been making with my classes. This is the first book, and it's pretty simple. This is for kindergarten, first, and second grade, and this is a mini book. I have thousands of these scraps of paper. These are 12 by 4 inches, and these are left over from cutting squares. So usually when you get drawing paper, it comes in a rectangle, but sometimes you want it to be a square. And so these are all of the edges of all of the papers that have become squares over time, and also from a previous art teacher. So I have a lot of them, and I want to encourage the students to make something out of them. And one of the things that I'm teaching them to make with them is these mini books. The mini books are a little bit bigger than a mini book that somebody might make for their doll. My daughter is in first grade, and she's been making teeny tiny little mini books for her teeny tiny dolls. She's got 4-inch dolls, and so they have maybe 1/2-inch little, they're like cards, but they're doll books. And this one is a little bigger than that, so they can learn the bookmaking technique. But it's kind of a similar use. They're drawing in them right away. They're making a little story, and it's a little bit more of a toy than the other one. You can see that I'm tearing these, and I have that bone folder, which I got in the fall. I've been using them for card making, and I've been really enjoying them. This is one of the things that I got to use at the workshop, and I hadn't had bone folders before. I can just tear things myself and crease them myself, but it's nice. I've been enjoying using it. So if you like folding things, I would recommend it. It's about $7, so I only have one per table group for my students, and they have to try to share it amongst themselves, but it's been nice to have. So I have 6 little pages. Those are 4 by 6 inches, and they have one torn edge. A lot of printmakers and a lot of bookmakers like that torn edge on purpose. I do have a paper cutter, but it's kind of fun to have that torn edge. It gives it a little bit more of a tactile quality. And then that piece is for the cover. That's also 4 by 12 inches. And rather than tearing it into 2 pieces, I'm folding in those sides to make the flaps. That's another detail that I enjoy, although it is a limiting factor on the size of the books that we can make, because it gets a little too expensive if I start buying really big colored papers for the other sketchbook. So that's part of why the other sketchbook is a half page instead of a full page. But I do like them. I think they're kind of fun. So I've got the cover, and then I have the inside, which is stacked and then folded. And that inside piece is called a register. We've been watching a video about bookmaking of a professional publishing house. So they're actually a really cool artisanal publishing house that casts their own letters out of, I think they said it was a lead alloy, which I thought was pretty interesting, and then puts together all of their own letter blocks by hand. And that's been fun to watch, and it does talk about things like registration, and then also the way that they sew the inside of those hardcover books together. They have this cool sewing machine that they use, and all of the parts that go into making a book. It's a cloth-bound book that they're making. Those Coptic-bound ones that I was showing earlier have 4 registers in them, and these ones only have 1 register. So you can see I stapled that. You can sew it, and I did try some where I sewed them and then knotted them, but with the younger kids, some of them don't know how to tie a knot yet, and then also it takes a little bit longer. They like having a little bit of time to make a little story inside or draw inside. My daughter has been drawing princess stories inside all of her little books. But this is showing if they do want to put the thread through it and knot it, and they do know how to tie a knot, then you can do it this way, where that's some waxed linen thread. I have it through a needle. It is really easy to thread the needles on the waxed thread because they stick together, which is nice. And then I just go in there and tie the knot. I have some foam under there, and you'll see that again later. I already had this foam. You can do it without the foam. You can hold it at an angle and then take that awl and punch it at an angle, but it's easier to do it with the foam. So there's the sewn book that's finished. And then this is the other sketchbook that we've been working on. This one is for 3rd through 5th grade. And they're starting with 3 pages of 80-pound 9 by 12 inch drawing paper. And again, we're tearing those edges. This is usually the part that takes the longest in class because a lot of students haven't torn edges like that before, and it's also a little bit heavier weight paper than they're used to. So you do really have to press down on it, get those creases nice and kind of crisp and mashed down there, and have to turn it back and forth 4 or 5 times. I don't encourage them to wet it because then it'll be wet and I don't want to be touching it if they're licking it. So we're creasing it several times, and that bone folder again is kind of useful for that. And then I just tear it like that, where I'm holding it down and pulling it out. Some students find it easier to take a ruler and hold the ruler down. It's a thin metal ruler, and tear it against that. Or the teacher from the conference liked using the bone folder kind of like a letter opener, and she put it inside the fold and was pulling it down like a letter opener. I don't think any of the students have experience with letter openers, and that hasn't worked for any of them yet. I did do that for the class, and it worked, but I thought it was a little bit harder. I think it might be a generational thing about the letter openers. It was a little bit harder for me to do it that way than to do that hold it down and pull it straight out kind of method. So then we stack all of them. The tear side is a little bit nicer when it's facing down. That's usually more of what printmakers will do, but it's fine either way. And then we fold it in half so that that's one single register. And if we're going to make more registers, we would just do that again a couple more times. And then this is the cover. I have a couple of different colors of cover, and I'm letting the students choose. I have kind of more earth tones, a little bit kind of subdued colors, and those were I believe 12 by 18 inches, and I've pre-folded them and cut them in half in order to fit the inside. It would be better if it was a couple of inches wider, if it was more like maybe 14 by 18, but those are harder to buy, so these are less expensive and so easier to do with hundreds of students. So those are the flaps. It should have about a finger width between the spine and where the flaps end, so that it sticks out a little bit on the outside. And you can see it would be nicer if it was maybe an inch taller, but oh well, it's more economical to do it this way. And I have them write in it their name in it before doing the binding, because it ends up taking 2 classes. So the first class, they tear and stack and fold the register and fold the outside, the cover, and then the next class they come in and sew it. We have been marking it and punching it to that first class. So that has 4 holes in it. It's got a center hole, a hole kind of near the top, kind of near the bottom, and then in between. And that's to make that saddle stitch pretty easy. And we're using the waxed linen thread, so we have those 3 colors right now. We're getting about 1 arm's length of thread, and we're using our same needles that we were using before for doing felt stuffies and embroidery. It is, again, really easy to thread them, which I like, because some students struggle a little bit with using the cotton embroidery thread and threading them. I didn't tie a knot there. I just let it hang out the end, and knot tying also adds a little bit of extra complexity, although the 4th graders should know how to do it by now. But it's just doing a stitch that goes forward and then back, and then I'm skipping that center because I want to end at the center, so I'm going to go over the center and to the next hole, the hole that's past where I have that piece sticking out, and then I'm going to pull there, and then it gets that other kind of normal stitch, goes down the next hole, comes in the next hole. I haven't done this part with the students yet as I'm recording this, but I might have to print them a diagram or something. I had a printed sheet for when I was doing this for the workshop. It's straightforward, but also you can end up with going through a hole more than once if you don't think it through ahead of time. So then I just came back up to end into that same hole that's on the inside, and I'm cutting it off and tying it, and the knots hold really well because this is that waxed thread. And I do like having that. I hope that I have enough for it for all of the students, because it is nice to work with. I'm tightening those up a little bit to make sure that they're going to stay, and then tying a knot. Here I'm making that front window, and this is one of the details that I really love about this specific design and that I haven't seen in other saddle stitch books. I'm sure there are people who do it, but I really liked it and I hadn't used it before. So I have a piece of paper that's the size of the art that's going to go into the window, and I traced it, and then I drew a little margin in there that's going to help hold it in place later, and I'm drawing an X in there. I do cut the X with a knife, so I'm going to have to do the knife part for the students, but it's pretty fast and easy. I like that. And then I like putting old recycled art pieces into it. So in some of the ones that I showed at the beginning, there was one with a watercolor canyon that I had painted and stuck in a drawer, and there was one with a ink tree, like a dead tree that was made out of ink, and that one also was sitting around in a pile. And I like this as a way to repurpose artwork that I'm not necessarily going to put up on my wall, but that I kind of like, so it gives it a little place to show itself. So there I am cutting that X with the knife, and I cut to the inside of the margin, not to the very edge, and I'm folding those triangles back. I find this easier than, I think when I was a kid I would fold it and snip it with scissors, but then I ended up with a little wrinkle in it, and I like this one better now that I have some knives. So I'm going to place that in there. And then I fold that triangle back a little bit so that there's going to be a place to put the tape and get it set in there. And then I'm putting a piece of tape across it so that it'll stay in place. I like about the flaps that then it's going to cover that up so you won't notice it unless you fold them back. And some of the students, if they don't have time to make a separate picture, or they don't already have a picture that they want to put in it, they can fold the flap around the first page as long as they gave it enough space on those flaps. So some of them have been doing that instead so that you can see directly into the book through the little window. And then that is the whole book. So you can see there's several pages in it. There were 6 little pages, so there's more like 12 pages now. And you could see that sewing and the stitching in the middle of the register. So that is all I have today, and give it a try if you want. Thank you for watching.